Hello, everybody. This is Jules, and before we begin, I would like to say a few things regarding this wonderful podcast. This is a project that I have been thinking about since 2019, and it's only now that I have managed to get it going. So I do appreciate that you're taking the time to give it a listen. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Creative Caravan that has supported me in the production of this podcast. Also, a very big thanks to each of my guests who allowed themselves to trust me with their stories and helped me in creating a space where people can feel like they can relate to one another, learn from one another, and find a sense of belonging. Enjoy! Welcome to So This Is Love, a podcast about love, the loss of love, heartbreak, and the meeting of self. We share stories on how the relationships we once had teach us about who we are and define who we become. And maybe through these stories, we can answer that age-old question. Is it better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all? So, this is love. And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of So This Is Love. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. His name is Roland, not his real name, and he'll be here to talk about a very monumental relationship that he had in his life that actually began more than 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. More than 20 years ago, with a woman named Deborah.
Yes.
Also not her real name. Welcome, Roland.
Thank you very much, Julia, for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to have you here because we have talked a little bit about this particular relationship, which is why actually I called you to come on this podcast, because I think your story is a powerful one. But I think what you've told me is literally maybe 5% of what I will hear today.
All right.
Because we the kind of relationship we have, we draw a lot from past experiences. Yeah. So I'm very excited to hear what really went down. Because I think as we've talked about relationships, as we've tried to advise each other through different things in life, you always draw from here. And I think you look at it from a point of learning, which is really the purpose of this podcast, is for people to look at these relationships that they had in their lives. And rather than just look at them from like, oh my God, I'm so done with that. It's like, yes, this could have been good or bad for me, but everything we go through has a purpose in our lives, doesn't it? Especially if we allow it to teach us and to be a teachable moment.
That's correct. I think a good relationship is one where you learn something from the person that you were with. But I think an amazing relationship is where you learn something about both of you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I like that. I might put that in my podcast notes for this particular episode. Said by Roland. All right.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask you to take me to the beginning. Mm-hmm. You said 21 years ago. So you must have been a young man, because you're still a young man.
I'm still a young man.
But
so I was a younger man then.
You were a younger man then.
That's
and true. I want you to tell me, I think let's start with how we met. You know, on YouTube, like how we met videos are one of the most popular videos, because people just love a good love story, but nobody wants to hear and then after how is it going? Because that's where the meat is. It's like, every movie ends at the wedding day.
I think that's the problem, right? The problem is always the narrative that we have is always the narrative of how it starts, not the narrative of what goes through it, what takes you through it, and how to keep it going. So we all know how to start a fire. We all don't know how to keep it flaming. So that's where...
I'm sorry, I'm just here clicking, snapping my fingers because I'm like, eish.
Yeah, it's a heavy one.
I have to write that again.
We all know how to start a fire. We don't know how to keep it going.
How to start a fire. Okay, I've written it down.
Yeah, we know.
Guys, I'm going to put this on a show note. If I don't put it on the show notes, I'm going to put it on my Instagram and put it as a quote next to a fire. We know how to start a fire, but we don't know how to keep it going.
We do. And I think one of the biggest challenges with our relationship nowadays is we are a generation of commodifiers. We're so good at making everything a commodity. We know how to work towards something. We know how to buy. We know how to wear, but we don't know how to maintain. We don't know how to sustain. We don't know how to grow. And that is indicative of the kind of relationships we have. When I was growing up, I was growing up in the 90s. We were looking mostly at advertisements. That's when adverts were real. That's when TVs became flattish. That's when billboards were introduced into the town. We're like, what is this big post down the wall? Why is it? It is because they were trying to they were selling you something, and you got to the point where you didn't see. It became difficult for you to see a narrative towards a product, or you saw as the product and what it's going to make you become.
Or make you feel.
Or make you feel.
Yeah. Guys, if this is not indication enough of the kind of quality guest I have today, I don't know what else is. All right. So, Roland, take us to the beginning. How did you and Deborah meet?
I was in classroom. I was in a classroom in a very boring lecture. And I was setting myself up in the back, ready to put my legs forward, take my pen. I was writing in pens and my big foolscap, and I knew I was going to sleep in the class. That was the plan. The plan was to sit in the back and sleep because the lecture was so boring. He knew.
Are we talking high school, uni?
Uni.
Okay.
Everyone knew this guy was going to make us sleep. And it was a Wednesday afternoon. The sun was setting, and the sun would always set on the right side of the room. So I sat on the left side of the room. So when the sun set, I'd see this golden streak coming through the classroom. It looked really good. I'd been to this class once before, and I was very excited. It was the first time. It was like the second week of the term. And the first time the whole class was in the classroom. So I walked in early, went inside at the back. And the first time we went to the class, which was the week before, we were like 8 people. And it was 10 minutes and, introduction, whatever. But I did recognize the way the sun was setting. Beautiful. So this second time I went in early, went inside the back on the left, and I was waiting for the sunlight. Because I love the golden sun. When the sun is setting and the streak just looks like jewelry on the grass. And it started setting, and I was like, the class is amazing. And the lecturer just walked in, put his books down, and the door, quietly closed. And then it opened again. And just as the beam of light hit the blackboard or the whiteboard straight towards the door, this extremely beautiful woman walked in. She walked in and cut the sunlight in half. It's like the sun it was amazing. It opened the door for her. She walked into the room. And I would be lying if I didn't say the whole class stared.
Damn, I feel like I'm at the scene in a romantic drama where the two finally meet. I feel like I'm watching something.
Now, picture this. I was on the back left in a class of roughly 40 people. And she walked into the door. Everyone stared. There was complete silence because the lecturer just walked in. Everybody's kind of setting themselves for the class.
Yeah.
She walked in, and there was the seat that was available. The only seat that was available was the first desk next to the door, and that's where she went. She put her bag down. She didn't even look at the class. She kind of just looked at the 2-3 people sitting around her, and then sat down. And to this day, that memory is etched in my mind. And the class went on. It was fine. I kept throwing looks to see, who's this person, what's happening. Because we never met. It was just a classroom. And without fail, the lecture was extremely boring. And he gave us tons and tons of notes because he was like, write everything I say. And we did. And when we were done, and I write very fast and I have a very good handwriting. When we were done, I had 9 pages of notes from this gentleman. And he said, okay, fine. Next time we're going to have a conversation about da-da-da. It's not going to be me lecturing. It's you telling me about the things we've talked about. It was a diplomacy course. And so, fine. Everybody realized these notes actually matter. And people started asking everyone, did you take all the notes appropriately? You could see the conversation started, especially those who weren't writing. But I had a sports thing I had to do after that class because it ended at about, towards 6. And so, put together my notes, put it in my bag, and I was like one of the first people to walk out after the lecture walked out. So I never got a chance to talk to everyone. Remember, it's the first of the term, so we don't know each other very well. And as I was walking out the door, she also picked up her bag and walked out. So I got to the door about, just a meter before she did, and I could see her coming, so I opened the door and I, let her go like a gentleman, sure. Yeah. And she said, thanks. And I said, it's cool. And I left the door open and walked in there in front of her, and I kept going. She said, excuse me. And I turned around and I said, yes. And she's like, you walked out of the class really quickly. Does that mean you have all the notes? And I was like, yeah, I do. I write fast, and it wasn't very difficult to write down the notes you wanted. And she said, could I borrow your book?
Oh my God, I'm in a rom-com.
I was like, unzip bag, look inside, pull out notebook. Here you go. And then she's like, how do I find you? And I had to give it back. And I was like, open the front page, and at the very bottom, pull out my pen, and I wrote my phone number.
Look at this smooth mother F.
I was like, no, me, I'm a supportive student, man. I'm all about Africa development, you know what I mean? Study, young woman. Be the change you want to see. And I gave her the book, and I was like, yeah, you got everything you need? She's like, yeah, thanks. And I left. And turns out that engagement for her was much, much more than I thought. Because for somebody as attractive as she is, everybody would want to linger and have conversation and get to know her. I was the first person in our university who ever just did what she did. Here's the book. Cheers, goodbye, and left. And she, in her mind, she was like, this guy has completely no interest. Nothing. In my head, I'm like, oh my God.
Give her the book and go. Don't mess this up.
Just leave. Just go away. And that was the first time we met. And honestly speaking, I think the sports event I went for, I was useless the entire time because my mind wasn't there. I was like, who is this person? Can I see, when is the next class? Next week? Can you not be closer? And that's how Deborah and I met the first time.
Wow. And so what happened? How did you start to date? Did you get into a relationship? Because you were with her for a
Very
period
long
of time.
Yeah.
So how did the relationship progress from the notebook? If you can just get into that moment where you started to see each other, just take us through that very euphoric stage. You know, we all love a good love story.
Good love story. Okay, so I will jump back and forth in time just to help with the summarizing the story so it makes sense. I think it was like maybe 2 weeks after we didn't meet in class, and she gave me back my notebook, and the conversation was very respectful and very clear and very simple, very short. Maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks after that we started getting group work, and it is a very intensive course once you start doing group work. And so I think the first 3 or 4 groups, myself and her happened to be in the same group quite often, predominantly because I was a more vocal student, and I had the luxury as a vocal student of being able to pick who I would like to have in my group. I'd be like, yo, you want to be in a group? Yeah. Do you want to, Debs, do you want to come through? Yes. Okay, sir, let's do it. We are 5. She was always like the third or fourth person I picked, just to make sure I'm not like Debs. You know? I was like, Martin, Phyllis, Deborah, are you interested in? Yes. She was always, and I got to find out later that people would even try and book her before. Like, when we get the next group, you're in.
Damn, she was a hot commodity.
And she'd be like, no, but probably I will be in Roland's team. So everyone was like, okay, so you're Roland's type of guy. And so we started having this very almost like school-like professional relationship. But it's uni. It's as professional as school and university can be. But it was very nice, and I got to see her and I got to meet her friends. And she got to meet mine. Now, typically in a relationship, in university, no one is thinking relationship long term. People are thinking, who's going to be my girlfriend for the next term or 2 or whatever. No one is thinking, I'm going to be with this person for 20 years. That's not the way you're thinking about it. And so even in my engagements with her and other people and conversations we're having, that was never the plan. I was mistaken, but that was never the plan. And so about, 5 months in, after back and forthing and just having conversations, I was like, would you like to go catch a movie at some point? Like, are you interested? And it's university, and I'm talking to many girls and having a lot of friends, and so is she. So you can never really be sure if somebody's with somebody else or not. So when I said, do you want to go for a movie? Her first question was, but what about so-and-so? And I'm like, what about so-and-so? She's like, I thought you two had a thing. I was like, no, just a good friend of mine, hang out all the time. And she's like, what about so-and-so? I'm like, yeah, no, nothing. She's like, but then that hug was a lingering hug. I'm like, yeah, who do you not hug and linger in uni? Like, everybody's a lingering hug. And she was like, okay, so fine. And I was like, what about you and that guy? And she's like, no, he's a family friend. What about that guy? Oh, I've known him from primary school. And I was like, you see, we didn't know. So we went for a movie, extremely good movie, had a lot of fun, laughed the entire time because it was comedy. I love comedies. And then it was so nice. We said, do you want to hang out and have another and watch another movie? So we were at the theater and we watched 3 movies in a row.
Whoa.
And we missed our classes on the day. Because we watched, I can't remember what the movies there were, but we watched, I think it was like The Mask or something.
Oh, those are the really good old days.
You know what I mean?
Because right now, there's nothing much in cinema. There's nothing much in cinema.
Like Netflix has killed that vibe. So I think we watched The Mask, and then after that, there was like a Rush Hour 1 or something, and then there was something else after that, which was like a rom-com, which I hated, but she loved. And I was like, oh, cool. So let's laugh. Oh, my God. Oh, laugh. Oh, my gosh. I was not into it, but I was happy to. You would sacrifice and enjoy it. And then after that, it was home time because it's now like 11 p.m., right? Because we started at like 2 or 1:20. And we watched the whole thing because we were meeting at the school bus to be able to go to school. And we skipped all of that. And we had a really great time. Then next time when we went to school the next day or university the next day, again, we went back to the semi-professional thing. But there was a difference. Usually in uni, you'd give everyone a hug. It's standard procedure. But this time she kissed me on the cheek. Ooh. I was like, oh, okay, I see. And that for me was, I was like, what does this mean?
I'm dead, guys. I can't handle this. I'm trying not to laugh, but it's so funny.
What does this mean? Do you like my cheek or do you like all of me? And and so I was like, cool, wow, this is nice. And then I started noticing a couple of things. Like when I went for break, she would hang out with her girls and her guys friends, and then every now and then she'd come to where I'm at. And I was like, oh, this is cool because I've got my guy friends, and I had a lot of female friends. But then when we were eating, it was mostly guys. I don't know. The girls went elsewhere. And so she'd come and she'd be like me and my crew of like 3-5 gentlemen and her. And she fit right in. And I was like, what the hell? Interesting. But I was not confident in making moves. I was like, she's still super hot, whatnot. And she did that for all of that term. But I wasn't making moves. And so one of my boys slid into my spot.
Snap.
And I have to give it to him. I mean, he put in effort. He put in a lot of effort. And so one time I come to school, it's like Feb, and it's Valentine's. And I see him and her holding hands coming through, and she has the biggest bouquet of flowers I had seen. Like, it was huge. And I was like, bro.
Did your soul die a little bit?
It's funny. I really think, and this is the thing about guys at that point, I really think that even though my soul was crushed, I was there kicking it along with the other bad feelings, because I didn't want to have feelings for anyone at that time. And so I was kind of happy, but also I was broken. I was like, fuck. I was like, fuck. and they kind of had a fling of sorts, right? Which the stupid idiot came and told all of us about, because this is what boys do at that age. And I was like, well, I don't know if she wanted you to say that. And obviously, being uni, it's a small microcosm of society. Somebody tells somebody who tells her. And she's like, you're fucked up. And I'm like, no, he's fucked up. You chose an asshole. And so that disintegrated. Now, the problem with that is he's still one of my crew. And now it's awkward for her to come hang out with us. And this is the quote unquote ex or whatever. And so it's just a floating situation. But I still like this babe. This babe's all right. She's not bad. She's cool. So we start now again. Remember, we're still in the same class. Now it gets to the end of the term, because end of the year. And then now the exam is tough. But again, I'm not bad in this course. One of the reasons why I find it boring is because I know most of the stuff the guy's talking about. So she's like, yo, I'm doing poorly in this grade. Can we help each other out? I'm like, sour. But she's like, but let's not do it with these people. Can we just do it, me and you? I'm like, cool. Let's do it. So we actually have a one-on-one tutoring situationship, like friendship or partnership or situationship for a whole term. And that's when I'm like, I actually really like you. You're really cool. You've got your stuff going. The problem though, and I think it was very obvious to me, is I wasn't checking myself in that situation. I wasn't asking myself, why do I like this person? What is it about this person that I really enjoyed? We moved towards the end of the year, and I was like, yo, I think me and you can pull something off. You want to go for like a date? And she was like, yeah, but those are boring. I was like, oh, what do you find interesting? She says, excite me. And in my head, I was like, that's exactly what I want to do here. That was the first time I did a picnic in my life. And I went, and I remember my father to this day is like, you had picnic. What was going on? Because I baked a cake. Why
did you just buy a cake from the supermarket?
Yeah, because I'm me.
Okay.
Roland.
Okay, Roland.
Roland does his thing.
That's dope.
So I baked a cake. I got cookies. I got like popcorn.
Did you bake the cookies?
No.
I love it.
I bought the cookies. Like Oreos or something like that. It was fancy. They just come to the market.
Oreos back in the day was for like rich kids.
Proper rich kids.
As we ate Marie biscuits and the nice
house of manji. One for you, one for me. It was really actually quite an impressive thing, and crisp and everything. And I got one of these Maasai blankets that had like canvas on the lower side. Very fancy. The whole thing cost me like 4,000, which in the early 2000s was like 40,000. It was a lot of money, right? And I'm 20 or something. So took her to this fantastic picnic spot, and before Karura was Karura Forests and Friends. It was just Karura Forest. I took her to a nice spot, and actually I think it was like some other place, but it was a beautiful setup. It was next to the water. Yes, it was a different place. It was Paradise Lost. And we sat down and we had I had you know those radios that had batteries in them? Now we got Bluetooth. Now then it was an
The big
A
ones.
battery. Yes.
The A, not even double A.
double
Oh
A.
my gosh, I haven't seen A batteries in forever.
An A.
We use them in torches.
Yes, exactly. Or a
wow,
D
wow,
battery.
wow,
It was
wow.
big. I remember I bought the batteries, got the it was not a CD player, it was a cassette tape player. And I had recorded my neo soul jam.
Playlist.
That's what it is, baby. What's up? It's, if you hear a song, you
Love it.
rewind.
You rewind. Yes. And you've labeled it like one.
Yeah. Side A,
side
side
A.
B. You know the
Minute one,
jams.
two. Yeah.
And you know, that's by the time I'm recording all these beats, you know, you're taking them from like KBC and like Sundowner and whatever. That was the energy. So we pop, we sit down. The music was really, like, I was like, man, it's like I wrote these musics with the universe because they knew exactly to follow the flow. So it was amazing. She had a very nice time. And then she kissed me, smack on the face. Like, I was like, damn.
First of all, your attention to detail, I love it because I'm such a vision person. Like,
I'm also a visual person.
You know what I mean? Like when things happen and people always go like, Jules, how do you remember everything? I'm like, because like how do you not?
It's how do you not?
How do you tell a story without the detail? Because the devil is in the detail.
It's the detail. That's what it is. I think the way I've pictured it, my life is a bunch of Polaroids stuck on a very big wall. So that was the beginning of what became our first relationship. And I asked her out around maybe like 2-3 days later. I'm like, yeah, exclusive. I think you're going to be my girlfriend. And she's like, why do you mean I am going to be? Because I haven't asked you yet and you haven't said yes, but I'm going to ask you shortly. And she's like, okay. And then I was like, would you like to be my girlfriend? And she's like, yes, I would love to. And that was what that was.
Can the crowd please take a moment to applaud Roland? Nairobi men, we don't just become your girlfriends. Just because we let you into our house, maybe we've cooked you one meal. You have to ask somebody to be your partner.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people are still debating about this. Like, why do I need to?
Oh, people are debating.
Oh my God. Do you know the ghetto that's Nairobi?
Wow.
You don't know, clearly.
No.
I mean, of course, a man like you cannot stay single.
I'm not on these streets.
Yeah. Let me tell you. Yeah. So.
Which is really disappointing because I think the deeper the start is, the deeper the foundation is, the higher the building goes. And a lot of people just don't. We're in a hurry. And I also, even as we talk about this situation, I can also see myself making mistakes of commodifying things and structuring relationships in a to-do list, tick box situation kind of way. But I think we all learn in hindsight, do we not?
Right. So back to, you're now dating.
Yeah.
I assume she said yes.
Yes, she did.
And she's your girlfriend.
Yes, she is.
And how long did you guys date for?
7 months.
Okay.
And it was the worst 7 months of my life.
Stop.
Yeah.
After the picnic with the blanket that has the canvas underneath.
So bad. It was so bad.
Why?
So I think a lot of, and I said it earlier, we know how to start fires. We don't know how to fan them and keep them burning. Starting the fire was very easy. In a relationship, for it to work, you have to have substance. And honestly speaking, I was too young to have any substance. And so was she. But I feel like there was a lot more for me to do. Because I feel like in that situation, I really set the tone. I was meant to set the tone for the relationship. What are we doing? Where are we doing? What is it? Like, we like each other, great. Then, what was next? And there was never a next. It was always, shall we go here? Shall we do this? Shall we see that? There was no essence. There was no value. It was a very hollow situation. And 4 months in, I was so tired of it that I didn't, and she was also very tired. She actually got tired like the first week. I didn't know how to break it off. And I was like, but I loved her dearly. And that was the convoluted way in which the situation started. I understood my affection for her, but I did not understand what it, apart from that, consisted of. And so obviously that immaturity cost us, and it ended up falling apart very drastically. It was a big fallout. And I took it very badly because she was the first love of my life. And it took me 2 years to get centered again. But then two things happened in that situation. I built a hell of a lot of resentment for that individual, but also built a lot of resentment for what I thought relationships were. You see, I had a bad
blueprint.
That's actually a perfect word. I had a bad blueprint. But then because I had a bad blueprint, but I did not know it was a bad blueprint. I turned against the company that makes blueprints, not against the blueprint I had. So I was like, the whole structure of relationships is complete garbage. And even the relationship I had during that 2 years, first, the girl looked exactly like her, which was a ridiculous situation. But also, you can tell when you're in a relationship with no plan, because the second relationship was worse than the first. And so I stopped and I was like, screw this. I'm not doing this at all. I'm a good person. I don't need this garbage. And so then what happened was there was going to be one of two ways this was going to end up being. I was either going to become bitter and become an asshole, or I was going to elevate myself away from these situations and just isolate. And I did isolation because I don't know how to be an asshole. It's hard. It's quite difficult.
Actually, it's not. I can tell you. The ghetto, that's Nairobi.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I think it. So, a mutual friend of ours who had heard her side of the story and had also heard my side of the story sat me down one time very innocuously and was like, "Hey, having heard you and her speak, it's amazing how miscommunication can ruin everything." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then she very articulately explained how the breakdown I went through after my relationship is the breakdown she went through, but in a different way. And that opened up for me an avenue for conversation with her, because I honestly thought, and I think that's one of the things that I got to learn at that point. I honestly thought that pain is private, that it is exclusive, that whatever you go through, only you can understand. You're the only person who feels the dungeons and depth of the darkness that you go through. It's only when you sit down and hear it from somebody else's perspective that you realize everybody has their way of going through it, but it's still as dark and it's still as deep and it hurts them as much. And that's entirely what happened. She went through her journey that was very different from mine, that was still dark and empty. And so this friend of mine said, you two should sit down and have a conversation. And so almost 10 years to the day or to the month that we said goodbye to each other, we met up again. And life had happened. She'd gone to work elsewhere. So had I. But we said, why don't we just sit down and have a chat and get to see who you are now and who I am now. And that's when we recognized the immaturity in the things I had done. I had really commodified her. I had not seen her for who she was. And she recognized that stat. She was like, you don't like me for me. You like me for what I look like in your life. I look good next to you, but I'm not really good for you, and vice versa. And I was like, yeah, that was actually very, very true. I recognized that in the day of commodities and branding and adverts and, Vic Skingo and all of those songs and whatever, what we all wanted to do was wanted to look right. We never wanted to be right. And she said, from the day we met, I thought that this was the person you were going to be, the studious one who helps me with uni, who has a plan, who looks forward, thinking. All you were trying to do was stunt for your friends. You were trying to look like the guy who's got the hot girl in class. After being her, like she's saying from her point of view, being myself, I know that there has to be more to the world than how I look. And I fit, she says, standard of beauty then that actually even today is not the standard of beauty anymore. Now we've moved away from what that was. And I realized how I bought into a narrative then. But to a point, I was still somewhat convinced that I was still right in thinking that she was attractive. It wasn't about the people. I just think that my immaturity didn't allow me to express it to her the way I ought to. And this second time when we met, I was more enticed and convinced that this could be a good partner for me, but it was based on still the idea of what I thought a good relationship was. It wasn't actually the real thing. And so we started dating again. And I can remember it was roughly, actually it was about 10 years and 3 months after we broke up. She was older, I was older, we were now in our early 30s. And we didn't even really do a date situation. We were just like, come hang out at my spot. I come hang out at your spot. What are we doing for work? I drove her to work. I used to do some work from home. So we just hang out. But we never really built that foundation I talked about. And I think that's one of the things that I really look back to and think, I really wish I spent a little more time on that. Because maybe 5 months into just our, hanging out and not being sure about it, we got pregnant. And I was like, I am the gentleman. I'm not going to stay. Of course I'm going to stay. You're a good person. I'm a good person. Let's go. But I knew that she had not been convinced, and we weren't in the right space. And that's how we started our long journey to not making it work.
Right. So she's pregnant now.
Yeah.
And, you're mature, but like you said, this is more retrospectively, like you were both probably not the best versions of yourself that you needed to be.
That's for sure.
And then what happened?
So we move in together, we meet her parents, we meet my parents. The parents are all cool because they've known us from a while back. They're like, I remember you. Yeah, you are that young man. And my mom's
I'm
like,
sure everyone thought it was like a page out of a romance novel.
That was the other problem. Yeah,
because everyone's like, of course, now you're back together.
This is the one.
Yeah,
see, it was not the others. It was this one. I remember my mom telling me, I knew it was her. I was like, oh God. But my sister looked at me and she was like, I know you. Are you sure? And of course, you're like, yes. You're not going to walk into a situation and think no. My sister was just like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I'm sure. And she was like, well, as long as you are telling yourself the truth, I don't care if you lie to me. I never understood that. And when we got into the situation, or relationship actually, one of the things we really learned very, very quickly is our aspirations of life are very different. And the way we picture it is very different.
What do you mean when you got into the relationship? Did you get married?
We did, and it was a garden wedding. We had 16 people.
Oh, you jumped the whole... I'm sorry.
I was going to get to that.
Okay.
But we did it after we got our daughter.
Oh.
So I was going to get to it. But while we were relationshiping, as she was getting pregnant, more and more pregnant, that's when you start sitting down and thinking, okay, so what do we want out of this? Where do we want to go? Who are we? What's the plan? And very quickly we recognized that we're very different. The things that I had in mind...
Oh, even then?
Even then, like 2 months in. The things I had in mind are not the things she had in mind. The goals I had were not the goals she had. Like, we're very different. Right. But we're not different in a bad way. We're just different. It's like, we're just different. I would like to do this, do that, do this, and go here. Oh, okay. I would like to do this, and do... And you realize that, okay, how do we find a central point in our thing? Because we're not there. There's something missing, and I did not know how to bring it in. And you can't force somebody to agree with you. So I was like, okay, you do you. I'll support you the best way I can. I'll do me. Support me the best way you can. And even in that support situation, we recognize that the way we support each other is very different. Our love languages could not be more different.
Okay.
Wow, it was so different. I was a big communication and touch person. And she was a big gifts and words of affirmation person. But we were very, in those ways, I struggled to get, because I'm not a gifter. I'm just not I will do acts of service, huge acts of service. I'm very good at acts of service. I am not gifting. What? I'll buy you socks.
Right. So it's like your number one was her number 5, and her number 5 was your number one. And that's why it was just so.
In fact, it was exactly like that. And then not only was that so, I was a very outgoing people person. She's not. She's 100% crib. Like, home, done. Like, we do one thing a month. And at that point, I was doing some stuff in public, and having her support would have been really cool. But it was not her thing. And I really understood. I was like, oh, cool. It's not your thing. I get it. It's sour. And we also have a little girl. Let's, or we're getting a little girl. Let's work towards taking care of you and the baby and all of that. But it's lonely out here. And one of the things I know about Nairobi is when you get out there and you start doing things very publicly, you start attracting people who are not necessarily for you. They like the ride. They want to be with you because of the ride, but they don't necessarily want to help you in any way. So I was attracting all these scumbags, both men and women. And whenever I'd come and be like, oh, so-and-so has invited me to do this thing, she'd be like, are you getting paid for it? No. So why are you going? It's in Nanyuki. It's going to cost you fuel to go and come back. And I had a large, it's a big fuel Range Rover. And she's like, it's a 3.9 liter engine V6. By the time you get there and come back, you spend 8,000 on fuel alone. Now you're going to be there 2 days. You have to stay at this place. And then you're doing an event. They're not paying you for it. I'm like, yeah, no, it's a start. They're getting a couple of people in. And she'd be like, okay, you go. And I'd get into the car and I'd go, and it could cost me 15 G's to just get there and come back because of oil change, whatever. And it cost me now 30,000 to spend the night. Then I do this event and I'm looking at the people at the event and I'm like, these are not broke folk. These people paid to get here. And then when I find out later, actually, a good friend of mine who was asked to host, was not able to host, was being offered 300 Gs to do the event. And I did it for free. Then when I get back to the person and ask them what the hell, they're like, you never asked? I was like, but I did ask. And they said, oh, I didn't hear. And I was like, oh, okay, so these are the kind of people around me. And she'd be like, yeah, if I knew more, I could help you. And I was like in my head, yeah, if you are participating more, you'd help me. Then that small set of resentment starts showing up. And on her side, the same thing. Whatever she wanted to do professionally, I'd be like, okay, yeah, you do it. I'm happy to support. She's like, okay, so the event needs me to go here, do these things and whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll take care of our little girl. Or by then she was born. And she'd be like, okay, cool. But I think I need more help in that way. And I'm like, what more do you want me to do? And she'd be like, oh, come out to this place and let's do this thing. So I'd come out, I'd have the daughter in the car. She's doing a lot of the work. I'm supporting, but the way I'm supporting is not the way she thinks support looks like, right? I'm supporting by taking care of our little girl, playing games, carrying her around. But what she wanted was somebody to talk to other people. So she's not a talker.
Oh, because she's not a talker.
I'm the talker. I didn't know that because we didn't communicate that very well. So she was, at the end of the day, she's frustrated because instead of talking to 40 people, which was the requirement, she talked to 3. And even those 3, she talked to them at the end of the day because she didn't know how to. But I was with the daughter the whole time. She was like, why didn't you give me our daughter? Then you go talk to them on my behalf. I'm like, well, you didn't make that clear. The resentment starts. So those little, I call them marbles of pain, started filling up our buckets of affection. And
damn.
It got to a point where marbles are very small, and they're very light, but then until you carry many of them.
And then your what did you call it? Your what? Bucket of affection is probably full of water. But then if it's full of marbles, the water will come out and be full of marbles.
And you can't see the marbles when they're underwater. You don't see them well.
Ronald.
Yes.
I mean, Roland. I'm sorry.
So
that's deep. That's deep.
And the thing about these things is slight creeps. Slight never shows up like a thug at the gate. It creeps. It's quiet. You fill up it, and the analogy is very specific when I say marbles in a bucket of water, because when you see a marble, we've all seen those banos. When you see a marble, it's glass with a little color in the inside. When you drop it in a bucket, you'll not see it. It disappears. So when you have 50 of them, the bucket is much heavier than it was before. It looks like it has water, but you can't. Why? It's not giving what it's supposed to give. That's what was going on. And so 2 years in, or just a year and a half in, we saw the crisis. The crisis was bad. It was going to a point where we're not talking for a week or 2, and she could understand that there was a strain point. So we're at the point where our love languages are very different, and we realize, okay, 1.5 years in, this is bad. We're in a bad place. We need to do something drastic. So we decide, let's get married. Like, okay, cool. That's going to fix everything. Well, because I'd hang out with her fam, and we had such good fam connections and whatnot. And so we're like, yeah, sour. Now, because I'm in the early stages of starting a business and how work is limited, we said, we're not going to spend a stupendous amount of money. We could have, but we didn't want to. It was just unrealistic, unreasonable. So we planned to keep it under 100,000. And we said we're going to invite our immediate family members. We're going to send notifications to everyone else and just rebel against the whole 2 million, 5 million shilling thing. So found a good venue, invited my folks, my siblings. She did the same thing. My dad got a pastor friend of his to show up. And we each had one friend there. One. I had a friend of mine who brought the dress 5 hours before the wedding. I actually remember this. And I remember ironing my trouser and my shirt for the day. And our little girl then, who was just, roughly 1.5, was there. And she was pregnant now with our second born. And she came with her then best friend, playing the music, ding, 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 on her phone behind her as she walked. It was a very basic thing. And the ceremony and everything was over in like an hour. And then we sat there and laughed and had drinks and ate until 3 a.m. That's how you know you have it was a fantastic.
Yeah, it kind of sounds charming, to be honest.
It started at 4 and ended at 3. It was amazing. And we laughed and we had drinks and we had speeches and whatever. But honestly, adults were 16, plus children were like 23. And we went home on Saturday because it was a Friday. We went home on Saturday and we're like, okay, deed is done, rings exchanged. This is going to be better. And it was. It's actually surprising. It was because now there's a sense of, okay, sir, we're all in. Let's go. Let's put it all. Let's go. But we never had, and this is the thing we both talk about now, we never had the person to help us understand what that meant. We were still working with, what am I being in this relationship? We didn't know. We didn't have the expertise, and we didn't have the counseling support. We didn't have all the things that are tools that empower you to get into a relationship. Because every relationship is going to be difficult. But then when you have the tools to go through them at the point you're going through them, it makes it easier and you see long term. And so after about 3 to 6 months, we went back to that pile of gunk that we were dealing with, where slights keep happening. And it actually got so bad that there were times we wouldn't talk to each other for 3 weeks. Right? It's just, we've got 2 kids. We're trying to make life work. But we were not a very good support system for each other. And she decided also staying at home made sense because we have 2 little children. And I was like, Sal, I'm happy to do that. And I'm going to get into entrepreneurship. And I did. And I did a fantastic job in entrepreneurship. But it cost a lot because it was very early ages. It wasn't like now where we've got a big environment of investment. So being one of the first ones, it took a lot in terms of financial, mental, emotional, and physical tolls on me. And I was at my worst. In fact, in my life, I honestly think that period was the worst of me. I was the worst version of myself. So we were both not giving each other what we needed. And because we didn't have a foundation firm enough for us to know how to relate to each other and support each other, we were basically working off crumbs. And at some point, maybe 5 or so years in, it got to a climax where what was affection now turned to disrespect and even hate. And it's very easy for relationships that work only on an emotional dimension. And this is fair warning to everyone. If you are in a relationship that is intense on the positive, getting intense on the negative is quick, fast.
Ooh, child,
quick, fast.
That is
quick,
hella
fast.
true,
It's
isn't
quick,
it?
fast. Because when you have if you think about it, like,
but I think it's the ones that are very intoxicated and euphoric, and it's moving at 100 kilometers per hour, very, very fast.
Yeah.
But some of them end up okay.
And that's the thing. I think the
I
ones
don't know.
that it's true. This is a very mechanic. It's very strange. I was making my car once. This is going to be very interesting. And I explained this to a mechanic. I was like, this is the life that will, and I'm going to tell you why I'm calling him a mechanic. Where this is what's going on in my situation. Because you get to a place where you're bleeding so much, you're hemorrhaging, that you will talk to anyone who'll listen. Anyone. Because at the point you're losing yourself. You're like, what is wrong? And so I'm telling this mechanic, man, can I just sit here because my life is shit? And I'm explaining to him, and he listened for what could have been 2.5 hours because he was changing the brake pads and my suspension. And he stopped while he was putting one wheel in. He stopped putting the wheel in and he put it to the side of the car. And he sat down and looked at me on a stone. And he's looking at me, and that's when I realized, oh my God, I've been talking for an hour and a half, and I'm basically unloading all my stuff into this guy's my mind, and I don't know his name. I just call him mechanic. I have no idea. And he looked at me and I looked at him and I was like, oh, shit. Wow. And he said, I don't know you. Because it was the first time we met. But I can tell you that a relationship is like this. And then he points to the shock absorber and the spring of the car. The mechanic is like, I don't know you, but I will tell you the thing I've learned. And he's an oldish guy. And he said to me, a good relationship is like this. And he points to the suspension of your car. So there's no wheel. So just work with me. My wheel is out. So what you're seeing is this round disc, as you see when your car is being changed. And then above it, there's this spring that goes up. And then there's a metal thing in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. That thing in the middle is the shock absorber, and the spring is the spring. And he said, if a car has just the spring, the wheel will be bouncing up and down uncontrollably. And you will not be able to control your vehicle because the wheel is very rarely touching the ground. But if the wheel only has the bar, the shock absorber, it'll be so hard to control your vehicle that whenever you try and turn, your wheel will refuse to turn because the wheel is just stiff. So when you connect the spring and the shock absorber, the spring is the emotion of feelings. Because our feelings are everywhere. Today you wake up, it's cold, your feelings are terrible. Tomorrow you wake up, the sun is shining, your feelings are up. You have a good meal, you're feeling happy. You have a cold meal, you're feeling down. You're all over the place. The spring is what enables you to have feelings. But the shock absorber is the rigidity of a decision. Because you've decided you love this person, you love them when it's good and when it's bad, you'll be able to manage those emotions that you're having of happiness and sadness and emptiness and fullness and presence and lack of presence and love and no love. And he said to me, whenever you're driving your relationship, you have to make sure every single spring and shock work. Because there are very many. There's the financial spring and shock. There's the emotional spring and shock. There's the children or the family spring and shock. There's the extended family spring and shock. There's the expectation spring and shock. And this man spoke for what had been 20 minutes, and he gave me more therapy than I'd ever gone. Like, I'd never had these things anywhere.
Right.
And he said, go home. Now he said, putting my wheel back, and said, when I'm done here, I want you to go home and sit down with this person. And I want you to take a pen and paper and write everything that you're feeling and give it to them. And then demand that they do the same. And so I went home. We had not spoken for a long time. And I went home and I tried to do something similar. It didn't work out the way I expected. We didn't really write in, like, she wasn't in that space. But the effort I had made to do that brought her about maybe a couple of days later. And we decided, instead of just writing, we'll talk about it. And the deal was, don't say you, say I. And so I said, I feel this way, I feel this way, I feel this way, I feel this way. And she said the same thing. And what it came down to was we are wonderful people for someone else. We are not wonderful people for each other. And it was now trying to figure out, how do we decouple this situation? We didn't necessarily say it that way, but we recognized after 6 years in.
Wait, so so the analogy didn't work? I was waiting for you to tell me, so now we put the spring and the shock absorber.
Actually, no, I think it did work.
Okay.
It worked because it's okay.
To buy a new car?
To buy a new car. It's true. I like that. That's good. It's okay to buy a new car. But it's also okay, if the old one doesn't work, to give it to somebody who knows how to manage it.
Yeah, it's probably just not the car for you.
It's not the car for you.
That's why there's many types of cars.
Yeah, there's types. You know what I mean? I am definitely off-road, 100%.
Yeah.
Some people aren't. And it was sitting down and getting to that place where we looked at each other and we're like, we came from a very Christian upbringing and good backgrounds, and we believe families should be together. But we also believe that living below the anticipation and expectation that God gave us is also not what we should do. Mm-hmm. And it was obviously a very hard conversation to have. And it took us another 2.5 years to get there. But we looked at who we had become because of where we were. And we were less the humans that we should have been. Because you cannot thrive in an environment that doesn't help you grow. And it doesn't mean that the affection wasn't there. The affection was there. It doesn't mean that the understanding and the celebration of the individuals wasn't there. It's just, honestly speaking, I'm a diesel car and you're a petrol car, and we only have one tank of fuel. Can we pick which of us is gonna get the gas? Is it gonna be you or is it gonna be me? Because it's not gonna be the two of us, because we're different in that way. And at the end of it, we sat down and we said very amicably that we cannot do this as a crew. So why don't we separate? And these are my responsibilities. And I signed a little piece of paper that we both co-wrote. And she signed a piece of paper and we said, this is what we will be for our kids. But for each other, we cannot make this work. And we recognize that. We recognize that many people will see it as a failure, but we see it as our best attempt at being full humans and getting back to where we were meant to. And that was roughly 4 years ago. And she and I separated, and we have been taking care of our 2 daughters since. We are very good friends. We have co-parented very successfully, I believe. There's always going to be challenges, of course, but not because we are bad people, because we're human. But at the end of the day, I feel like I celebrate who she is becoming, and I celebrate who I'm becoming. And I don't see any failure in the decision we make, because looking back, I think we are fuller people than we were when we left each other. And I think that's the big win for us.
I'm going to take you back just a little bit, because I like how you've given me a description of generally what generally what the marriage was. But these marbles that you're talking about, can you just give me one or two instances when, forgive my French, actually, don't forgive it, shit hit the fan? You know, because you said you did some terrible things. Yeah. She did some terrible things. There's probably things that were said that you said it went from love to hate.
Very quickly.
Very quickly is what you said. Yeah. So, I mean, I want you to take me in there a little bit so I can kind of understand how the hell did you move from, we're going to get married to fix this. And then it looked like it was getting fixed. Because I feel like we looked like it was getting fixed and then it wasn't.
Yeah, I know.
So when was it? And, and I know it's not a point in time. There's many of them, but can you just give me one or two instances when you were like, yo, this is not what I thought. This is not supposed to be this way.
This is how I knew I was in trouble. I went for a work event and I sat down and had a conversation with somebody who I thought would mean nothing. And this person looked at me and said, you know, from where I'm sitting, this is a stranger. From where I'm sitting, you look like the kind of guy who is ready to be in a new relationship. And it was a week-long conference. And by the third day, I couldn't get them out of my mind.
And this is a female?
And this is a female, yeah. And I couldn't get them out of my mind. It took everything of me, everything. Literally, like, you know how you scrape at the bottom of the barrel? It took everything of me. And you know, it's a conference in different country, different place with your own, no one's going to ask you questions. It's just fine. It took everything of me not to drop my room card on the table and be like, see you in my room later. It took everything. And it's not because I'm a better person than anyone else. In fact, if anything, the only reason, I think it's because I'm worse, actually. The only reason I didn't is because I wanted to have a relationship with somebody I'd see again, constantly. I actually wanted a new relationship. You would have been a fling and it would have ended. Then I'd have been left now hungrier than I was before. So if I was starved, it's kind of like you're starved and then what you want to do is have a small meal, like a popcorn or, you know, something small. Then what ends up happening is it gives you energy for just a little bit. And then you remember what food tastes like, but you know where you're going, there's no more. And I was like, nah, I think if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this to somebody I'm gonna be with forever, or I'm gonna be with longer. And that started a string of deception and brokenness and seeking out affection from people I should never have sought affection from, and ruining relationships I should never have, you know, overstepped boundaries in. Because the first thing you do is you go for your friends, because they see you and they understand. And the first thing your friends do is they take one of two routes. They're like heavily against what you're doing, or they very quickly, which I kind of saw in my groups, which was really interesting. They very quickly buckle. And they're like, yes, in fact, I've been thinking about it for a long time. So I really understand a lot of the guys and girls that I know who have had extramarital relationships. I get them all. I mean, it's impossible to judge. It's impossible to judge. I'm like, oh, I get that. I get that in ways you can't understand. And so by the time we were saying it's time to go, that good, positive direction is what kept us from losing our minds. Because we knew it's not amazing at home, but at least it's not vile. It's not dark. It's not what a lot of the people I know, friends and foes, are going through in their situations, where animosity and viciousness is all you go home to. Because in that situation, you rebel by looking for somebody else to give you what you need. But when you don't have that, all you have is like an indifference. It's almost easier. But I can guarantee you that my heart was not in that home for so long. And it was really sad, considering that I had two little humans who could read right through it. And they could tell that we were not doing well. And without getting into too much detail of the younger ones, they lost so much of themselves trying to please their very broken and unhappy parents that they were...
Children do that, don't they?
Their cups were always empty, always empty. My kids couldn't wait to go to their grandparents' house. They couldn't, because that's where they went to get their cups filled. And both their grandparents are together. So they'll go to my parents' house and they'd have that. They'll go to our parents' house and they'd have that. Then they'd come home and you could see that they were almost chubbier with that energy. And we would suck them dry in like a month. Completely suck them dry. And they could see that when I sit in this chair, mom sits over there. When we're trying to watch a family, they try and bring us onto this one couch in front of the TV. But we'd never do it. She'd either go sleep or I'd go work or something. It was just... And they were the things they were seeing on that, the kids' animations always have happily ever after family situations. What they were seeing on TV is not the life they were living. So even the genre of programming they started watching started becoming different. They started moving to more like action type cartoons and Tom and Jerry type energy. They stopped family, like Santa Christmas type come together energy, because that's not things they saw. So they didn't know how to relate to something they didn't have in their lives, and it breaks you. I think it beats extramarital relationships. It beats gambling. It beats coping mechanisms. When you see your little humans crumbling in front of you, there's nothing worse than that, because you are the one causing it. It's impossible to manage.
Wow. So, Roland, I have to keep remembering this name. I'm like Ronald. Roland.
It's actually the name of the cable.
Oh, is that where you got that from? Because I was like, can you just pick a name? Okay. Yeah, Roland.
Roland. I keep looking at it so I remember what my name is.
I have it in front of me, but I'm still saying Ronald. So, Roland, I thank you for sharing your story. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that. But for me, it's just maybe to ask you, how do you think you contributed to the breaking down of this relationship? Because you did say you decided to separate.
Right.
So right now you are separated.
Yeah.
You're not a couple anymore.
No, we're divorced, yeah.
You're divorced. You're co-parenting.
Yeah.
And you said you're still friends and you feel like the relationship you have now is healthier than it's ever been.
Yeah.
So how do you think you contributed to the breakdown of that marriage and the relationship?
I think I wasn't myself. I wasn't honest to who I was. I bought into the consumerism mindset. I bought into the ideal beauty of the person instead of the ideal heart of the person. I was a consumer and she was the good. That's basically it. I recognize that now, because even after separating and dating other people, I've never dated anybody who looks like that. So I really bought into a mindset. I bought into an image. I bought into a pretty girl face based on what the era said pretty girl face was. But that's not to say she wasn't an extremely valuable person. She was. But because I never went looking for that, I never heard, I never saw, I never gave her space to be herself. So I wasn't dating the person. I was dating the image of the person. And that's so unfair, because when she came to the room, she brought herself to the room, but I couldn't get past how she looked, or I couldn't get past my image of what I expected. And I think that was my biggest flaw. That for me means that I never gave her room to blossom as a flower. I think I dropped the ball in being the wrong partner for her. I didn't bring to the table the things she expected. I was not the person she wanted me or needed me to be. And so it's very difficult to ask, a tiger to be a good swimmer in the ocean. And that's what I did, because she's 100% amazing. That can never be taken away from her. She's a phenomenal human being, an amazing mom. She's such a solid individual, so solid actually. And to this day, honestly speaking, I will always grant her that respect of being a great mom and a solid human. But the person I was being when I was in that relationship wasn't the me I wanted me to be. I was not the person I needed to be. And the problem with a relationship like that is it takes a lot of effort to get in as one person and then change while you're inside it. Because what you've already done is, when you're in the relationship, you've already created a certain way of things being done that you don't know how to change that system. It's so difficult to change it. And the courage it took to change took a long time for me to do it. And so by the time I was getting to the point where I was like, okay, this needs to be different, this needs to be looked at this way, I'd already built a castle in the sky in a certain way that the whole thing crumbled. And that's hard. That's hard. And a lot of men don't admit it. We don't admit that. Honestly speaking, it's a relationship breaking apart. I think has a lot more to do with the man than the woman. Now, there are certain situations where if we're talking character and behavior, that's a different case. If somebody does something wrong, that doesn't count, because then that's a behavior issue that other person has. But when it comes to relationship standards, expectations, and goals, that's a man's job. Not because it's a stereotypical, no, it's because when we say this is what we need, it allows the other person to be like, okay, this is what I can give you, and this is what I can't give you. So we need to figure out how you can get that. Or if it doesn't work for you, then I am not the person for you. But if you just wobble into a relationship like you're walking into a mall hoping to get all the goodies you're looking for, or you walk in looking at the boobs and the ass and thinking that's what I want, then you lose track of why are you here? And so when the woman turns around and says, this is what I need, you're like, what? What do you mean you need? What are you talking about? It was never about you. It was always about me. That's exactly what I feel like I did. I walked in not recognizing that there was a whole host of things I needed to be prepared for. I needed to be a man in this relationship, whatever that meant to just the two of us, not whatever society said that was, but just what did she expect of me and what did I expect of her? That was never clear. And now, looking back, and this is probably why our post-divorce relationship is working, we really crystallized those expectations. I am so comfortable because I have my list. These are the 27 things I need to get right. And if she's looking off, I could easily just turn around and look at the list and be like, oh, okay, it's probably because I haven't done this, this, and that. And then I get them done. And then I look at her again. And if she's still off, I know, okay, it's not a me thing, it's a you thing. Then I'm like, what's happening? And she's like, oh, it's X or Y or whatever. And I listen. And once I listen, I'm done. Because it's not on my to-do list. It's not on my list of things to do. And so she's fine. And that set me free completely. And in my current relationships, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm like, what do you expect of me? And this is what I expect of you. And then I'm just having such an easy time just having relationships with people, professional, emotional, and whatever, because it's just so clear who I am bringing to the table, and it's so clear who they're bringing to the table. And I have to give that credit to the relationship that I was in that failed. That's true. And
so where are you now?
Yeah, now I'm in a relationship with someone else who I love and care about very, very much. I won't talk about our situation because that has to do. But between her and I and our two little ones, who are now pretty big ones, we have a very strong relationship and friendship. We're very focused on making sure it's not about the kids. And I think that's another thing I've learned. It's not about the kids. It's about making sure the parents are good enough for the kids to thrive on them, because we are the soil that their children will grow from. And so we are very careful about making sure we administer each other in a certain way of respect, in a certain energy. We support each other in a certain way. I pull my weight where I need to. She pulls hers where she needs to. And we sit down and have conversations, good conversations, like good, what's happening with you? Don't tell me fine. That doesn't work. What's happening with you? Well, this is that, whatever. We have good, strong relationships. And because of that, I've seen her thrive in her way, and I've seen me thrive in my way.
By her, you mean the current or
no,
Deborah?
Deborah. Mm-hmm. I've seen Deborah thrive in her way, and I'm thriving in my way. My relationship's working really well because Deborah has met my current person. She's interested in how my children are relating with her and how they're going. And so, she's conscious of all of these things. And so I keep her posted. So she never feels like something's happening in secret, or she's not aware of her children's well-being or where they are, who they're with. And that gives her a sense of comfort and safety and peace. Okay. So she knows that she's respected as the mother of these people. And my partner now respects her in that position and recognizes that if there's anything to do with these lovely young ones, she still has her role is unquestionable. So she's the one who's going to administer these decisions for these kids. I will give an opinion, but that's what a blended family energy looks like, right?
Okay.
And it's worked out really well, because looking at the three of them, so my current partner and her, Deborah, I can only really tell how they are winning based on looking at the young ones. And the young ones are really thriving. They're loving the fact that they've got this person here who they call mom, but they've got this other person who they call daddy's girlfriend, who's really good energy and fun to hang out with. And yeah, this is cool. I like this. This is dope. Can we hang out? Can we do stuff? Because she's cool. She's young. And then mom is like mom. Mom's like momming. She's very momming. Right? She's still having fun with the kids, but she's momming. And dad just kind of watches all of us go crazy. And I love that. And I'm like, this is such a good dynamic. But then I've also recognized that I am fully responsible for everybody winning in that
You
team.
are, because you are the reason that these women have been in your lives.
Right. So no one came into this situation with intention.
Like, you're literally the person connecting the children.
Right.
And the ex and the current.
And Deborah and the current. Yeah. And so I recognize my place, but now I know who I am being. I am very aware of myself in this situation. And that gives me power to be like, nope, you've crossed the line, that's too far, move back. Or, okay, you've moved too far back, come forward. And that is like a traffic policeman situation. And I'm very excited looking at the future, seeing, because of course, definitely would love to start a family with my new person. And knowing that my other person has a family with me, I'm going to make sure that I play this traffic cop thing, partner supporting, whatever, for as long as I can. But the most important thing for me is to always allow everybody to be themselves and shine in their own way without trying to curtail what they're trying to be. It's hard most of the time. Very hard. But who said hard was bad?
Right. I have one more question. I wanted to wrap up, but I just got to do the interviewer thing. By way of example, I make this really, really quick. By way of example, in your current relationship, what would you say you're using as a tool that you learned from the previous relationship?
Right.
You know, something by way of example, like
that's so easy.
Yeah.
So I have the first thing I did was make sure that our communication style, not even communication, our love languages were the same.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I do nowadays as well, because I've been burned, homie.
It's hard.
And you can be attracted to somebody, but then you realize this is a guy of
acts of service. You hear physical touch. Wow. Let me tell you.
And it's so important to get somebody who your love languages are compatible.
100%.
At least maybe just one prime one.
No, in fact, I'm going to push the curve. Maybe 7 billion people, I am going to push the numbers. I was like 3 out of 5 have to work.
Wow. May I do 1 out of, I said 1 out of 5 at least, but I guess.
I did, because I recognize, you see now, for me, the stakes are higher. I'm coming with 3 other humans.
I hear you.
Whether you like it or not. And a lot of the times, people always, I've had this conversation a couple of times actually with my current prioritization. They're like, where am I on your priority list? And I'm like, let me be clear. I don't have one. I can't have one. If child 1 is sick, they're the number 1 in my priority.
Yeah.
If ex-wife has a financial issue that's driving her mad, number 1 in my priority list. If you are feeling empty and left out, you're number 1 on my priority list. It's a moving scheme of me trying to make sure all of you are in a good space. The best way to make sure that happens is by making me the most important person in that group. Because it doesn't matter what I do. If I'm not good, the rest of you are not good. You can be doing what you're doing, but if I'm not good, I'm not good. And making sure that I'm good has always been that thing I've focused on. So that when all 4 of you need me at once, I'm there. But let me tell you something. I am so insistent on love language because for me it's acts of service. It's what is it? Words of affirmation. My giving is different from my getting. My giving is words of affirmation, physical touch, and quality time. For me, the things I like, it's quality time, touch, and then words of affirmation. Like it's different. Then over there behind, we can do gifts and we could do acts of service. Yeah. So I'm very good at certain things, and some things I'm like, what? But when was your birthday? What would you like? That's not my strong point. But in terms of let's do something surprising, or let's hang out, let's go camping, let's go here, let's travel. Like we just did a thing with my current partner where we went out of the country and we hang out, which is very difficult because not many people are traveling post-COVID. And that was such a win. But I know that if I'm not in a good place, that's not going to happen. The second thing that I'm very good at is I talk with my person. Not because I have something to say, but because I want to get that stuff. All those marbles that I know could be in our bucket that we don't see, I want to get them out. And every time I've started a conversation, there was 3 or 4 marbles that I missed. And we pull them out, and I hear them, and I act on it. And I also pull out some marbles, and they're like, oh, I never even saw that. Then we do things. And I'm still here a year and a half later.
Well, congratulations.
That's what it is.
Thank you so much for just being vulnerable enough to give us this version of events in your life. And as you know, for those who are listening, I ask people to come on here and give stories around relationships that have had such a huge impact in their lives, that they're able to share these stories, share the lessons from these relationships, so they can inspire somebody out there. Because I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that everybody thinks their issues are their own. Like you said, actually, that I'm going through this pain, no one understands it, but there's nothing new under the sun. And that's Roland's story. I want to thank him so much for sharing with us today, and I hope you were able to take something beneficial away from that. Voice notes on Anchor don't seem to be working well recently, so if you'd like to leave an audio note for us with your sentiments on this episode, or if you would like to be a part of this podcast, reach us on our Instagram page at sothislove_podcast. If you have liked this episode, please remember to subscribe to this podcast and share with one person who you think might enjoy it. It really does help us grow. This is Jules. See you next time.